Yeah, we don't have a spotlight.
This is yours. This is mine. Sorry. Okay.
Security.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were saying. That's the last word. I'm very nice. That's what I thought you were saying. Everyone, this is Kat. She's a senior at LAR. She's going to present a little bit on her research that she's doing about multiracial and multi-ethnic races and forensics. And at the end, we're going to send out a survey link that's we're gathering data for our grant. So we'll ask you to fill out a survey. We'll also send a link to the survey that Kat will explain in her presentation. So, thanks, Kat, for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm Kat. I'm a senior in the Industrial and Labor Relations School, triple minoring in art history and quality studies and law and society. And I've been an independent research fellow since last May when I received my first grant. So this is just a short presentation kind of discussing Yes, okay.
Checking.
Oh, there it is. My work crosses a lot of different disciplinaries, so I think this is a really exciting opportunity to discuss specifically the sociological effects of multiracial and multi-ethnic women in higher education and what that happens to them once they're entering the workforce. So the significance of my research. When I first started my grant, I really wanted to discuss or look at if feminism has really evolved to be transnational and intersectional, because that's a lot of what I study, and if America as a nation has really evolved to this level of multiculturalism and what it means to be multiracial or multi-ethnic in the United States today, because I am myself. So definitely something that was close to my heart, but the project has somewhat evolved over the past couple months. And specifically with women, when they face discrimination, kind of what part of her identity is being discriminated against. So whether that is your gender, if it's a disability, if it's your ethnicity, or if it's your race, and how those really intersect in sociological effects of them. So the statement of the problem. When I first started looking at my work, I wanted to do a lot of lower education and look about how, as you really move through the educational system in the United States, how you're psychologically affected if you are a multiracial individual, and the kind of experiences, whether a lot of the research that I found was contradictory. So some people said that multiracial and multi-ethnic children develop larger problems because they're not really able to develop a concrete identity. But some of the research said that being able to interact with so many individuals and identify in so many different paradigms allows for a really full expression of oneself. What I found though was a lot of Ivy League women were missing from this. So traditionally in sociological work, the work is done on lower income, lower socioeconomic areas. And I really want to see how are women at a very high level of education being affected, because I think that was just an area that you could really tap into. So the historical background, these are a couple studies that I looked into. So the Poston study specifically wanted to look at a monoracial spectrum and transformed it into a multiracial spectrum and saw how people identified with personal identity, choice of group categorization, and integration in different communities and whatnot, whether that was going through your school systems, extracurricular activities, and whatnot. And the qualitative survey that was done by Chapman looked at a lot of biracial students and affirmative action in the collegiate environment. But a lot of this was done very broadly. There was no narrow, specific work done, so I wanted to take it a little bit further, and how people are really subversive, specifically at Cornell. So this was my methodology. I've been working with two research professors. One is in American Studies and one is in labor economics for the past almost year. And I constructed a survey. One of the most important parts of my survey was with, when identifying with a specific ethnicity or race, I left it open-ended, because I found that a lot of times when you move throughout US Census data, applying for colleges, you're only allowed to identify as one race, which I personally found problematic. So with this, I got a lot of amazing feedback, how people just self-selected and chose to self-identify. And I received over 150 surveys. I opened it up to all Cornell women. There were definitely some limitations. I couldn't reach everyone, but I was able to talk to some people even in this room. And then there was an opportunity to do a follow-up one-on-one survey. So I've done 50 of those with women who identify as many different multiracial, some people who identify as monoracial, and lots of people who identify with different gender identities, and it was incredibly eye-opening. Under the Institutional Review Board, it was all approved, so it was definitely all confidential. I can't share any response until it's published, which I'm still working on, but that's just a little bit about the methodology. The recording of the data, I had to do a lot of accuracy checks, so I've used a lot of recording systems, and because it is just me, just a lot of my memory. And then there's definitely ethical considerations, because sometimes there is a conflict of interest, which happens a lot with sociological work. So because I personally am multiracial, I obviously was very invested in this and was looking for certain responses from people. So when I was asking some questions and received answers that I didn't expect, I had to kind of make sure that I was checking my reactions and remaining as an unbiased observer. So these are some of the sample questions I asked. I asked people through a lot of different majors, double majors at Cornell. We have 7 colleges, about demographic makeup classes, the segregation of Cornell and the self-selection into that, and if their male and female classmates had different aspirations. A lot of the questions were, since the interviews are semi-structured, there's definitely an outline of it, but a lot of times I get to wait for myself if someone's saying something really exciting and I just follow up with that. And the results were really fascinating. So a lot of people, especially with segregation, almost every single woman that I talked to realized that there was self-segregation at Cornell, that people self-select into communities largely based on race and ethnicity. And sometimes when you're multiracial, you aren't able to find that home since Cornell is such a large institution. But one of the most disheartening results was that nobody realized or nobody recognized any way that we could change that. They said that this is the way it is and this is the way that it will be in the future. And a lot of, I think, multi-ethnic and multiracial people feel lost in the shuffle sometimes, which is exciting because we have things like Mixed. But with organizations like the Greek system, with athletics, with academic organizations, there really is no opportunity for people to connect with others who they seem are like them. So sometimes when I personally walk into a room and if it's my Greek organization and no one really looks like me, so it's definitely an uncomfortable experience, definitely not uncomfortable, but sometimes you want to find the ability to connect with others, and people at Cornell have just really found that there is no way to do that. And with Ivy League environments, I've actually talked to women at University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, and Yale, and they've identified the same problems, but once again, there is no goal or end goal to correct this segregation. So a lot of the findings that I found were that college is just a really exciting time, and you come and you really come into yourself. And with growing up multi-ethnic and multiracial, a lot of women talked about the hypersexualized experiences they've gone through with their bodies. And by the time you reach college and you are an adult at 18, you come to expect these experiences. So coming into Cornell, a lot of people just were, I guess, knowing that things like that would happen to them. And a lot of people talked about experiences with sexual abuse, feeling left behind in their classes, feeling spoken over, and traditional marginalization, especially when people ask them questions about where you relate with or what are you and whatnot, and they had experiences previously in their communities. A lot of times that people look to for resources for support. One of the other questions that I talk a lot to in my survey and my research is, do you feel supported by women across campus? And obviously most people say yes, because you think about your own friendships and your social circles, and you would never want to feel unsupported by people closest to you. But as a whole, most of the people that opted into my one-on-one interviews said that they weren't supported as a whole, because women at Cornell don't understand the experiences of people who aren't like them. So if you are in a homogenized group, you may come from the same geographical area as your friends, you may have the same major, and you have very similar aligned experiences, so you wouldn't understand anything that is unfamiliar to you. So a lot of women at Cornell have talked about feeling in a space where they feel lost and they aren't sure if they can turn to someone that is in a class and doesn't know them that well, because they will feel judged. So that's definitely something that I've kind of run into. And the strategies that I've thought about overcoming this are taking different approaches. So a lot of times in the literary history that I've looked into, people talk about taking a pacifistic approach, but I think what's more important is to take an activist or nonconformist approach. So I think that being a multi-ethnic woman in an Ivy League environment is definitely a unique experience, and you have the ability to move across a lot of different boundaries and talk about your experiences, but you really have to be willing to be a voice for that. So I think that a lot of times people feel like they are going to be suppressed, and that's kind of what I've experienced, definitely in my first 2 years, and especially when I talk about more. But being able to find other people in a community that you connect to is only something that happens when you are willing to speak up for what you believe in, and kind of about how you feel pushed to the side. And I guess oftentimes the word that I've heard is invisible. And the networks of influence. So kind of moving on to the sociological effects, because people that are multi-ethnic, I've talked to people who don't feel Asian enough or Black enough or Latina enough to join perhaps an MGLC sorority or a historically cultural organization, or they feel whitewashed, and they don't really have these networks of support to be able to be propelled into success in the future. And a lot of people think that when you go to an Ivy League, you're automatically set up for success and you have these networks around you and academic support, but there really is lacking. And I've seen some people feel just completely lost in that and aren't ready to know what they're going to do next. Once they leave Cornell, they won't really have a tie to this organization anymore, or other Ivy Leagues as well. And I think that being able to be nonconformist and finding that that's okay and realizing that you are able to be enough to be so part of so many organizations is essential. But a lot of times what I've seen is with my ethnographics, I've followed up with people, they haven't taken opportunities to intern or do research on campus because they don't feel like they will have the opportunities to do so, or they think that if they're hoping to work, I talked to one subject who was hoping to work in the Africana Studies department and didn't feel like she was Black enough to take that opportunity and opted out herself. So a lot of times that happens when you do enter the workforce, you don't feel like you have the qualities to be a leader. I'll guess summarizing all my research. The recurring themes that I saw were that multiracial women weren't sure if the discrimination they were facing was tied to one specific part of their race or gender, and they didn't feel like it could be anchored enough. So the intersections of your race and your gender and your ethnicity crossing over has not really been transformed at Cornell or across the Ivy League environments at all. I think that at a place that is so hyper competitive, people are very quick to put you inside a box. And that's definitely seen historically and politically throughout the nation. So what people really wanted was a lack of human response and for people to realize their problems, illuminate them, and be able to talk about them, because Cornell is an environment that generally suppresses anything that is uncomfortable or foreign. And navigating traditionally white institutions in the future was a topic that came up a lot, because Cornell is a place that it sets you up for corporate environments to immediately step onto a master's degree or a medical school, and everyone wants to be the best and is fighting out for one another. And a lot of people saw these next steps as traditionally monoracial and homogenized, and they weren't sure exactly how they would be able to really rise through that, especially talking about the gender wage gap. A lot of women just said that it's the way it is, and I know I'll be affected regardless of what I do, and I think it gets worse as it goes on. So being self-deprecating already and self-selecting out of those opportunities at 20 or 21 was something I personally found shocking. So what I've noticed and gathered so far as I've continued to analyze all the data is that even at an Ivy League environment, especially at Cornell, where we think of it as something, it's one of the top research institutions in the nation, it's so supportive. It's an amazing place where you have faculty that are world-renowned. People are still feeling as if they are already setting themselves up for ultimately not potential failure, but they're selling themselves short, particularly women and particularly people that don't fit into one specific box, like myself. So that's all I have. Thank you so much. Yeah, sure. So if you want to participate, I have a survey that's been approved by the IRB. It's a really short survey, and I send it out kind of to just get a pulse on people. So it's just some questions about your aspirations, your past experiences. It takes 5 to 10 minutes. And then you can self-select into a one-on-one interview with me that's confidential. It gets coded and it's anonymous, so the only people who see it are myself and my advisors. And then if it was to ever be hopefully published, it would be under an anonymous name. So you can opt in to do that. And if you don't attend Cornell, you can do it over the phone or over Skype. I've done some of those. Or you can do it on campus with me. It takes about 15 minutes to a half hour, and it's relatively informal. It's just kind of getting a pulse on people here and their experiences, kind of just what I talk to, and your future goals and ambitions and whatnot. So I personally love doing them. I think it's so much fun to connect people that I otherwise wouldn't be able to. And it's allowed me to kind of find more people like myself on campus. So I think Mixed has the survey, so they'll send it out.
We'll send it out when we send out our post-conference survey, and if you choose to do it.
Yeah, if you choose not to, you know where to look.
Great. Thank you, Kat, for coming out. Okay. So now we're gonna screen Little White Lie, which is a documentary film about a woman who grew up believing that she was Jewish and then about finding herself coming into her heritage later in life. After this, we'll have a little discussion session run by Sophie, who is the advisor to Mix and the Associate Dean of Students at Cornell.
Hi everyone. So if you didn't already meet me, I'm Elizabeth. I'm going to talk about the Who Am I When I Am I campaign, which is kind of just what I called this like concept that we explored last year in Mixed. And we had a photo campaign, we had a whole event behind it, and we also ended up publishing a book. So I'm just going to brief you on that. I don't know if, do we have the books here?
Oh, yeah.
You can pass them around during the talk, but go ahead. So first, who am I? So as Sophie said, I went to Cornell. I was one of 3 founders of Mixed. Prior to last year, Mixed only served as a discussion series within the Asian and Asian American Center at Cornell for a number of years, but it was like on and off because in the Asian and Asian American Center, you don't always have an intern or a student working there who identifies as mixed. So to continue the discussion series is pretty difficult. And I went to a discussion series session my freshman year because the intern who was working it, she was mixed Filipino and white. And but I was in the Filipino club with her, and she's like, you should come, we're both mixed. Like, do you want to join this discussion series? There's gonna be free food. And I was like, I'd like dinner, so let's go. And it profoundly stuck with me how I had a very difficult freshman year, and that was towards the end, that event. It was the first time on campus that I felt like I really belonged. And I thought, this is great. I'm gonna go to like everything all the time. The next year she went abroad and this discussion series stopped. And I thought, this needs to come back and this needs to have better leadership, and so we made it a club. I myself identify as Italian Filipino. My father's Italian. My mom immigrated from the Philippines when she was 21. I'm also a dual citizen of the Philippines, which I like to think is like another way of being mixed. And I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is very, very diverse, but I was born here in upstate New York, which is super not diverse, which was in my own identity experience, like pretty much like the hardest thing I had to go through, but I was 5, so it worked out. I skipped a lot of it. Anyway. So Kip Fullback, if you know, he has a book called The Have a Book. And when I was at Cornell and we were putting this club together, one of our challenges and one of our inspirations was the mixed community here. I knew my friends that were mixed, which was like all 2 people who founded the club with me. But I didn't know a lot of other people because the way Cornell's cultural situation is on campus is that we have a lot of silos. We have the Filipino club, we have an Italian club, we have Vietnamese, the Black Students United, all these things. But within those spaces, there are people that like aren't full, like Asian aren't full, but they exist in a space where everyone else is full, so you kind of just like choose. And I felt like I had to choose one over the other. And so when we were talking, we were like, we don't even know like who would be in this club. And so maybe we should like find out on campus, and how do we do that? And like, what if we just like invited people to come to a space and like talk about being mixed? And Kip Fullback's book, Have a Book, he does that. He goes all around the country, and he specifically asks people, what are you? This question, I find every like mixed person I've talked to has been asked it. I think it's the one unifying experience, despite a very individualized ethnic experience, because mixed people aren't always the same mix. At least I'm pretty sure everyone has been asked this question. I could be wrong, but it's pretty common. And so I'm asked this question, and when you get asked this question, normally I've heard it can be very positive, it can be very negative. And as you flip through his book, you'll see like a lot of people talk very negatively about it, because there are some negative feelings that get caught up when you have to self-identify to every person who can't put you in a box. So we did not want this to be a negative experience. We wanted people to celebrate being mixed, and being asked what you are is kind of like not always a celebration. So instead we wanted to turn the conversation to build this community, make it a positive experience. We asked, what does being mixed mean to you? And so we took Kip Fullback's Hapa book and we made a Cornell Hapa book more about in celebration than kind of like this rebellion against the question. So basically just like did social media, and we were like, are you mixed? Do you want to be in a book? We can take your headshot, you can use it on LinkedIn. And we just like, I like bribed my friends to come, and I was like, are you mixed? And I like saw people on the street, I'm like, you look like you might be interested in this. if I'm totally wrong, I'm really sorry. And it was just like network connections, because we needed to know, like, is there really, does this space need to exist on this campus? Is it just me and my 3 friends, we're the only mixed people here, and then maybe we'll just like have dinners every other night, you know? But there is a real mixed community on campus, and it's evidence of this book. We were able to take 60 photos. There are people who are mixed, but like maybe didn't want to be in the book because they don't think about it, like they haven't reached their, it's not important to their self-identity. Everyone gets to choose what's important to them. But we wanted to at least make a safe space where people could celebrate being mixed and like find a community being mixed and just like be able to build this great foundation that has now led to this book. So in the book, we took a lot of pictures. These are just some of the pictures that we took. And I feel like this is a good representation of kind of like how different people can be. In this conference, we've talked a lot about how mixed is an individualized experience. Because even though like you and I might both be mixed, like we might not be the same mix, and then you know, like how can you both be the same and both be different? And I think this book is a good representation of that. Just like all these people that can find something in common and still like not know like all the things that it takes to be that other person, which in the end, I guess is a human experience as well. And some of the things they said, in comparison to like Kip Fullback, he said, I'm just one of the faces in, I think it was 2,500 or whatever. Because we were able to swing the question around to be less neutral, or some people last night, we made it more positive, we had some really cool answers. The one at the top is actually my favorite. Our friend Toby said it, I am large, I contain multitudes, by Walt Whitman. I feel like it was everything I had thought about being mixed in this great little quote, and I had never heard it before. Someone said it means that I'm more than just the sum of my parts, that I love where I came from, even if it took me a while to accept it. Being mixed means looking different from your parents, but identical to your siblings. This one was a cute one. They came together. It was your brother and sister. I've been mixed all my life. I don't know the difference. I thought that one was pretty profound. It was just obviously to this person, maybe his identity came really easy to him. But I thought it was really meaningful. Being mixed means having an innate understanding of the spectrum of people on this planet. We're more than the things we check off on forms. I know forms are a big topic of conversation within the mixed community, but I liked that this person kind of took it beyond that. Like, yeah, this is like, obviously, it's like something we all hate to do. But like, I'm so much more than what I'm gonna put on this form. You know, like when you fill out your college application, like, so you check a box, so you check 2 boxes, even if it's like Cornell, which has a wonderful policy, you can like check however many you want. Do you feel like whole at the end? Just because you were able to tell them that you're more than one race. It's an interesting concept that I gleaned from that. So that was a very brief introduction of this like kind of bigger movement, but what I wanted this book to achieve was to bring together the community on campus that didn't really exist in one place. And I didn't want to force people to feel like I'm mixed, so I can't be in BSU, or I'm mixed and I can't be in like CASA, the Korean Students Association. And that was not my intention, but I did want to like show like you have this great resource at your disposal. If you do want to come and you do want to talk, like we can discuss and we can talk critically, or we can just talk, I don't know, like my big fat Greek wedding, which we did one night. So I wanted to turn the conversation from what am I to what does it mean to you? Because in my perspective, if you're going to ask that question, you better be asking, I want to know like, about you, instead of, can you please resolve my conflict with how you look? I don't know if anyone wants to share, I guess, like if they had to answer what does being mixed mean to you. We give these people a lot of time to write it down. This is their own handwriting too. So if you don't want to share, you don't have to. But I think it's something that when I talk about my mixed friends, I really try to encourage. Last you were in this photo campaign. Did you feel like, how did it make you feel? Sorry to put it on the spot. Wait, really?
I will be in it next year.
Okay. Oh wait, can I take a picture? We did a trial run of this. I don't know if you were in that one. But anyway, and I just made you take a picture. Yeah, oh yeah, somebody was in this.
I was privileged to be able to be in it as well, and it felt really empowering to me. It really, I don't know about you guys, but for me, growing up mixed, I'm always so excited to meet another mixed person, to find out somebody else is mixed, because there's so much strength in numbers, you know, it's just like, oh, I'm not alone. There are so many other people who, like Liz said, you know, have their own unique, but we have the same common identity as mixed people. So just to be in the room with that many people and then look through the book and, you know, see, oh, these are, because, you know, I haven't seen Kip's book for so many years, but these are all people right here in this community at Cornell. You know, we're such a powerful, strong community, and this was just doing it once. I'm sure as we continue to do this project, more and more folks will want to participate in it. And then, you know, reading the comments, it was just, again, it's just so great to be able to relate to it and to flip around the question of who are you, which is such an uncomfortable question to answer sometimes, depending on how someone's asking it. So like, wow, like what does it really mean to be mixed? It's an amazing experience.
We had some people like stay like an hour to answer the question because they had never been asked before, and no one had ever asked them, I guess, what are you in that way? Which I think was, I'm glad we kind of did give them that. How many people have felt? Has anyone ever been asked what are you in not? How many times have you been asked it in not a positive way? Everyone who has felt that way. How many of you have been asked it in a positive way? Oh, so that's more hands. That's so great. Oh, I thought it would be the other way around. This is lovely. Yeah. So the book is being passed around. If anyone wants to talk about it after I'm here, I know Columbia University is, I think they're trying to enact the same kind of concept of things. If you are at your campus trying to find a way to bring together the community, I feel like this is just one way of doing it, but it was highly successful for us. And you want to talk to me about it?
So we at Mixed just want to thank you guys all for coming. You know, some of you made some long trips. We hope that you enjoyed this conference. If you have any questions whatsoever about this club, how we run it, anything like that, feel free to contact me, contact any of the e-board members. We're happy to talk to you, and thank you again for coming. This is really exciting for us.
Also, we have a lot of leftovers, so if anyone wants to
Oh yes, please take food.